Well, I have our guest analysts with me for the rest of the program who will be giving their thoughts on the issues. Baba Yusuf is a policy strategist and group CEO of the Global Investment and Trade Company. He's joined by Chibuzo Okereke, a public policy analyst. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show tonight. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The SBM report, or the SBM Intelligence Report on the grim picture of the economics of kidnapping in Nigeria is what we've been discussing in the last half hour with the head of the security at the company. I wanted to start with you, Baba Yusuf. What do you make of that report as a whole?
Well, it's a reflection of, to borrow from you, the grim reality of Nigeria. But more worrisome for me is the worst potential of the future of this country. Because this is why if you take a step back just like 4 years ago and do a comparative analysis of how things are getting back to worse, it tells you the possibility of the potential projection of what is coming ahead. Let's even take in the next 1 year. And it is horrifying, you know, to think about it, but it's a reality we are all facing, most especially when it is very clear that the state, in this case the government, is obviously overwhelmed. I don't know, how they are going to take this serious to deal with it, because as far as I'm concerned, they are managing the optics, they are not managing expectation, and they are not dealing with the issues. And that is the more worrisome part of it. And
for you, Chibuzo, what's the most worrying part of this report for you?
Well, I think that the report just lends credence to the political economy of insecurity we have been shouting about in Nigeria. That we are not just dealing with economic disarticulation or poverty, that we're dealing with a syndicate, organized business sector with, income opportunity. And that is what is going on. And when you look at the report, 7,658 people having been kidnapped in the last 1 year. That is about 21 persons per day if you divide it by 365. If you look at the incidences, about 1,130. That's about 3 incidents, per day. And we just have, 36 states in the country. When you also look at because the question you asked about the disparity in the demanded figure by kidnappers and what was paid. Now you look at in terms of the number of people kidnapped against 11 billion, that's about 1.5 million. So that tells you what we are dealing with. We are dealing with a petty system that has now gone beyond the issue of high-level kidnappers. That this has degenerated, it has become worse. And if care is not taken, we are going to have a very big, issue in our hands.
And do you think that this is a problem of strategy on the part of the government, or is it that you mentioned that they look overwhelmed, but is it that we've not applied the right strategies? Because even in some of these areas and regions we have in the country, you have operating security operations that are ongoing, yet we have this crisis on our hands. What exactly is the problem when it comes to our security? Is it that perhaps technology will solve this? Are we unable to deploy technology to solve the problem?
Thank you very much for that question, Adeswa. You hit the nail on the head. And for people that follow my conversations and my writings, for the past 1 year, I've been consistent on one thing. I wrote 4 times on this issue. If you don't have an overarching strategy to deal with this issue, indeed every other issue, whether it is social, whether it is economic, as a government you have to have an overarching strategy and set your critical strategic pillars, of which security is key. Without security, there won't be prosperity. Without security, all your investors are not coming. Without security, you cannot build the roads. We cannot sustain our agricultural value chain. So the lack of an overarching strategy is the bane of the problem. Why? Because if you look at the entire structural issue you have with regards to the capabilities of the Nigerian armed forces, when the Global Firepower Index, that rates, military powers around the world rated Nigeria 4th, in Africa, behind Egypt, behind Algeria, behind South Africa. Whereas the total population of these 3 countries out of Nigeria is less than the population of Nigeria. Whereas the total number of the armed forces in Nigeria military less than 300,000, police just about 300,000, civil defense 10,000, and you have immigration about 30,000, manning about 4,040 kilometers, out of which over half is unmanned. Then it tells you that obviously we are just working, you know, impulsively. I'm not putting it just on President Tinubu's administration. It's a cultural corporate issue in Nigeria. You must go with a strategy to deal with this, and that is when you address your man and material issues. To say, how can you have one policeman to 600 Nigerians? How can you have one military officer to about 700 Nigerians? Whereas you have porous borders that all these bandits and kidnappers and ISIL and Boko Haram are streaming in like water through basket into your country. You don't have control on your borders, so your territorial integrity is called to question. So if you deal with the strategy, it will deal with the operational issues, it will deal with the, you know, even the value reorientation of your forces. Corruption is a cornerstone of these issues. We have armed forces and politicians being part and parcel of this cartel. And I tend to disagree a bit with Chibuzo. It's not petty. Because when we go into the conversation and dimension is, you realize that the kidnapping is actually sometimes a facade for the bigger game, where they use it to get more resources, where they use it to divert attention for a bigger strategic game in the gold reserves, in the other mineral resources reserve, so that your attention, they pull you out, and you move in there with your meager resources, and they continue doing what they are doing. And we can discuss more, but strategy is key, is a critical success factor, and it is lacking as far as I'm concerned.
Hold on, Chibuzo. I wanted to point out something he said, because you said it's a bigger picture, and you mentioned politicians.
Absolutely.
Are part of it.
Absolutely.
Do you have your facts? And I'm asking because I had asked the head of security at SBM, you know, why we see some regions have higher numbers than others, like Zamfara, Kaduna, and Katsina. And I asked him if there was underlying factors such as politics there. But when you mention politicians, I'm interested in that.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you. I may not mention name, but everybody knows in Nigeria that political thuggery is a precursor to what we have today. When those thugs are used and abandoned by the politicians, they resort to self-help to continue perpetrating their evils. And sometimes even when they are arrested, their political godfathers let them loose. And these guys already have access to arms and munitions, and therefore it becomes a thriving business for them. But that is even just the smaller portion of it. We have a record, and you have also announced it as the media, traditional rulers, Adishwa, that are part and parcel of this game of not just kidnapping, because, you know, permit me to say the discussion about kidnapping is running the issue because there are, like I said earlier, interlinks in this bigger game, including the deep state. So traditional rulers in Zamfara, in Sokoto, that have been removed, you know, for their partaking. You know, for example, the emir of Zurumi that was partaking in this and that he was removed, and you can go on and on. And there's a nexus between the establishment and, you know, this, what you call the bandits. We have had cases where military officers, generals, were court-martials for cases of probably collusion, including junior officers. This is a known thing. By the case of establishment, I'm talking about the political class, the traditional institution, and even the businesses. We hear Olukoede, the chairman of EFCC, in January saying that they traced 7 billion naira to a religious sect account. But unfortunately, judiciary frustrated the process because they pended and refused to allow them to proceed with prosecution. So suffice it to say that we are inadvertently enablers of this matter that has become a monster that we are trying to wrestle, and I'm afraid is becoming more difficult to do.
Chibuzo, he says, given the scale of the problem, it cannot be petty. I want you to respond to that, but I also wanted to ask you, why are we unable to trace the monies? I mean, 1 billion naira, it's not in cobble that cannot be traced. If 11 billion was demanded and 1 billion paid, how is it that we're unable to trace the monies? How is it that we're unable to make enough arrests? How is it that we're unable to stop them before the act is committed?
Well, you're very right, and that is the unfortunate thing. And when we talk about petty, it's not in terms of the scale, it's in terms of how easy it has become for people to just organize themselves and then run a kidnapping gang. And the SBM, the author of the report, also mentioned this, that today you don't necessarily need to have a high-level group even though there are influences of political thoughts and what have you. Well, the pettiness expression is dealing with how easy it has become that 2 or 3 friends can just come together. I had a colleague who was a victim of this and was actually kidnapped in his house in this Abuja and was murdered. And these people came, by foot and took them through the bush, throughout the night. So on the question you're asking, we have in the police system, we have the anti-robbery gang squad, we have the anti-kidnapping. We have not been able to tackle the issue of the assets of these people. How much have we put into these structures? How much has it delivered? I've done the BVN, we have the NIN, we have all kinds of, strategy in policy in place to be able to track, but yet we are unable to. And you highlighted something very important. The issue that even those who go to deliver ransom have now become victims. I've had that issue in Buhari area council here where somebody went to, so it's a failed and dysfunctional system where it seems that because of interest and patronage, we are unable to deploy our strategy to achieve results, or a collapse of manpower assets to be able to do this thing, and that is the situation, that we are facing. However, I needed that report to also talk about issue of turnaround time for rescue, because it will help us to also measure, the impact of the police and other security. Because how is it, and that is where I agree also with Baba Yusuf, there are some people who are kidnapped and kept in Nigeria, not outside Nigeria, for 1 year, 2 years, 4 months, 6 months. And certain kidnapping money ransoms are paid. The kidnappers replies and say that these monies are for feeding them. How is it that we are able to comfortably have? And 70% of Nigerian, geographical space is ungoverned. And that also talks to the issue of the manpower of the police. However, we need to also evaluate. So this kind of report is what the agencies of government, rather than issue disclaimers or try to water it down, they're able to interrogate it and use it to measure how far they've been able to deploy in achieving this. Because I don't see why it is possible, for somebody to collect 1 billion within the banking system, some cash, and they spend, and that also speaks to the issue of collusion, because these things happen in our communities, happens in our states, even at the federal level. So the reorientation, people understanding that though there is economic hardship, but we cannot amass economic survival through illegality that is putting many people, out of space. Yeah.
And that brings me to my next question, because if we say there's a nexus between poverty or the economic challenges in the country and what we are seeing with kidnapping with ransom, and then you look on the other hand, the shift in targets, just as this report has highlighted, ordinary Nigerians, babies, students, priests, and now even mass abductions where a whole family is taken. And you begin to wonder, you're kidnapping those who are also poor like you. And some of the things they demand are cigarettes, according to this report, motorcycles, food, clothes, petrol. How does that make any sense, Baba Yusuf?
Well,
is there really a nexus between poverty and this desperation to kidnap someone for ransom?
To a large extent, yes, but not more significantly than resource control and the quest for, plundering and exploiting our resources at this war. Because what the reports didn't even speak about, although it focused on kidnapping, is how, the flow of, permit me, I will use the banditry and kidnapping, is becoming more prevalent down even to the north central in Niger, where you have high deposit of mineral resources. Now, the poverty aspect of it, vis-a-vis what Chubozo was talking about, how petty it has become. A couple of friends will just do this because it has become attractive. Yeah. And even a wife can arrange her abduction for her stingy husband to bring money, whatever. But I'm looking at it beyond that. The fundamental issues, if you kill them, will kill these issues. And that is the fact that, like I said, the inclusion of some state actors as unseen hands behind the scene. And to lay credence to what you said about evidence of politicians, you hear politicians accusing themselves, mentioning names. For example, in the case of Zamfara, Sokoto, and Katsina, where they will be mentioning names. The terrorists will be on social media mentioning names and saying these are the people that are working with them and all that. So yes, there is to a large extent, on the right side of the flow, this pettiness in the town. But the bigger issue, like I said, is another methodology to divert attention from the bigger issues, of banditry, of terrorism itself. ISIL, Boko Haram and ISIS, if you go and look at the playbook of ISIS and ISIL in the Middle East, and even before that in Afghanistan, these methodologies are ways and means to get what you call the lower layer of logistics and resources and then divert attention from the bigger issues. Don't forget that we are aware that small aircraft come into this country to take our resources out. Now, to divert attention of security forces that are meager, they will keep on chasing this while they use that ability to also get resources for themselves. And that is the big issue. But more importantly, the corruption aspect of it, where the people within the system, whether it is traditional institution, religious institution, political actors, and the armed forces themselves, these guys have infiltrated the system. Look at how we're able to repent, to say you have repentant Boko Haram, repentant kidnappers, and you even imbibe them into your military and police. And they wear uniform, and what do we see? We end up seeing them being actually informants, to the bigger picture of terrorism in this country, just as kidnapping has been declared terrorism. And that is the issue. Yes, there's a nexus between poverty and kidnapping, but more importantly, there's a nexus between resource availability and the deep state in ensuring that this continues. Congo is a typical example for you, and now we are seeing what is happening in Sudan.
When you look at what has happened over the years, and this period that is under review by the SBM, how effective would you say the government has been? We've seen that the security agencies have also had casualties, and those who put this report together did give them credence that they are trying, but it's not enough. But I want to know, how effective has the Nigerian government and security forces been in combating kidnapping for ransom? What challenges do you think they really face? You both have highlighted complicity. There might be some form of complicity, and that's why we have this. But beyond that, what challenges do you think they face?
Well, I think first is the structural issue. Nigeria is a vast, country. You cannot command the kind of challenge we face today from the federal structure as we see. We still need to democratize the policing system. We still need the manpower to increase. You still need better accountability.
Will state police fix this?
Yeah, state police and even local government policing is very critical, because when you are addressing the issue of traditional ruler system is a local system. The IG of police does not understand that. Even a commissioner of police in a state may not know all the traditional ruler. He probably could know. So there is a kind of urban bias in our policing system. It has not gone to the grassroots and the local communities, especially when 70% of our geopolitical environment are ungoverned spaces. And that's why the turnaround time and the ability to kidnap and keep people can take the long time we're having, and nobody will be able, to address this. So we need to democratize that process. We need to be accountable. How much have we invested in the security system? Policing by the federal government, by the state government. What kind of resources does the anti-kidnapping squad require? We know if you go to STSS or even the IGP office, you will see every day that they go out in buses and return with some kidnappers and things they recovered from them. So we need even this kind of state level report that is more authenticated with a validation process to say this is what we are facing, this is what we have been able to achieve. The police system cannot become another political sector in Nigeria, where accountability, is prime and shrouded in secrecy. Police system is a professional body that is dealing with a major mandate of the state, of the government. So they have to be very accountable. So up to the moment, we cannot say, even if you meet the anti-kidnapping squad, they will tell you the kind of challenges they are facing in being able to handle this from internal resource allocation. And that is a very big, challenge. So I think accountability, or better accountability, is very critical. Democratizing the policing system down to the state and local government is also critical. Then multi-level or community policing system that include the 2020 Police Act that will just have been, repealed and reenacted, even had provision for private police that people can enlist to be intelligence officers to support. That section has not been implemented till the moment. So the police is not a secret court. It's not for exclusive preserve of certain people. It's for all Nigerians to join forces and stop our crime. I'll give you an instance in Anambra where the governor himself said, what are the things they recovered? We are bookkeeping record, where kidnappers were recording those they kidnapped, how much they demanded from them, how much they have paid, and even the balance, including the items they have purchased for their welfare and operation, which also means that there are stakeholders they are accountable to who are funding them. And these stakeholders need to realize that we need to keep our country safe. Indeed,
very good. I saw you nodding in agreement to what he was saying, but I think he also pointed out the issue of trust. There should be accountability, but there should also be trust between the public and the police. So how do we strengthen public safety? How do we ensure that people are safe enough to work with the police to give information as we round up?
Thank you very much for that, because it's very key. I remember during the Buhari administration where very good people of around Jere axis here on your way to Kaduna took it upon themselves to be informants, against these bad elements. And sadly, the moment they report, the people that reported and what they reported will be leaked to these bandits, from the authorities, and they will be killed. And it got to a point where they stopped informing the people. So this is a very big issue for Nigeria. Whistleblowers in Nigeria, whether in the corporate or whether in this case, have decided not to do it, because when you do that, you do it at your own peril. In fact, the state becomes angry with you, does not protect you. And then how can you continue to expose yourself to that? So yes, trust is key, but it is now the government that will now take the step to engender that trust. Well, permit me to quickly respond to what I was nodding at.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't respond to that very germane issue, the technology.
Yes, the technology.
Technology is a critical success factor at this one. And we have, I don't think we are all up there with due respect to the security agencies, because when you see the gadgets they are carrying, my background is information technology, but I'm a chartered ICT expert, and I know that some of the gadgets they carry are not up to par to what these jokers carry in the jungle. And you ask yourself, are we really serious? Are we really ready? Despite the fact that 20% of the total budget of 2024 is allotted to defense. Where is the money going to? So essentially to land, political will is very key at the presidential level to hire and place round pegs in round holes. I dare say, you see ministers that have no business being in defense, for example, or other agencies that are so critical. And we are using this serious matter for photo shoots. It's like a joke at that level. So you need to pick people that understand the responsibility and what it takes to deliver. Round pegs in round holes ability comes with political will to also fight corruption, because it is the key issue surrounding all this we are facing. If you fight corruption, you will be able to thwart these issues of collusion, this issue of bribery, resource allocation, and all that. Today, the armed forces are, especially junior officers, buy their boots, sew their uniforms. It's pathetic. Until this is attended to, we'll continue talking, and nothing will continue. Things will continue to go worse.
That's a fine place to anchor it. Chibuzo, any last word in 10 seconds?
Well, I agree with him, because political will is very central, both at the federal, state, and local level. Accountability is key. And just like the military, the police officers are buying their uniform. The condition of the police officers at the police colleges are very terrible. The last report we saw shows that about 50 people are given one head of fish as the food they eat at the college. So you're actually training people that come out and look at citizens as victims and not people they should work with, and that affects their approach and orientation to policing. And we can be more professional. We can show that police sector is not a political sector that needs to deliver better safety for the people.
In all of this, I think a critical question is also, where is this money going? Whether it's kidnapping for ransom money or the monies we are pushing into defense and security to fight these crimes. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time on Primetime today. I've been speaking with Baba Yusuf, a policy strategist and group CEO of a global investment company and trade company, as well as Chibuzo Okereke. I do apologize for that. Chibuzo Okereke. He's a public policy analyst. Thank you. Thank you. Have a great weekend.